Hey BMS Middle School Math students, 7th grade. This is Mrs. Wilborn again, and we are moving on. This is the final lesson in Unit 2. So moving straight ahead, and in this lesson you're going to be working with inequalities and how to solve inequalities. And we're going to be building on what was covered in the last couple of lessons. So this lesson you'll learn the difference between equations and inequalities, and you'll also learn how to write and solve inequalities. Finally, you'll learn how to graph them on a number line. Our essential question for this unit or for this lesson is, how do I determine the difference in inequalities and equations? And how do I solve and graph inequalities? So let's get started. We're always going to start out with some vocabulary, so we will do that again. Oops. So we will work with some vocabulary again. The first term that you need to know is inequality, and an inequality is a mathematical sentence formed by placing an inequality symbol between two expressions. All right, so we did learn about inequality symbols in the younger grades, and so those are our greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, less than or equal to, and instead of having an equal sign, we just have one of those symbols. So here is an example. Negative 4x is greater than 20. So here's an example of an inequality. Instead of an equal sign, you'll notice that there is an inequality sign. It could be greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. All right, the solution of an inequality is a set of numbers. That's really important. A set of numbers mean that it's more than one number that can substitute for the variable to make the inequality true. So for example, if I had x is greater than 5, my solution would be all the numbers that were greater than 5. So in my solution set, I could have 6, I could have 7, I could have 8, so on and so forth. So it would be more than one number, and I'm just going to put these dots so you know that we keep going. But a solution set of an inequality is more than one number, and in this case it would be all the numbers greater than 5. And then finally, a graph of an inequality. A graph of an inequality is done on a number line, and it is the set of points on a number line that represent the solution on an inequality. So if I were to graph this inequality, x is greater than 5, I would draw a number line, and I would go ahead and label my number line. So let's see, we'll start with 4, 5, 6, 7. And at the numeric answer, you would put a symbol, and your symbol is going to be a circle. Now, there's a couple things about the circle, and you'll learn about those later. And then you're actually going to shade the part of the number line in which the answers are represented, or the solution set represents the part of the answer. So you're just kind of going to go over, highlight the part of the number line in which the answers are part of the solution. So since it's all numbers greater than 5, I'm going to highlight that part of my number line. Okay, here are some symbols that you need to know, and you probably know the meaning of them, but knowing the word phrases that go along with them are very, very important. So first we have a less than sign. And when we see words and word problems like fewer than or below, these are words that represent less than. So this is a table in which you're just going to have to memorize. When you see a greater than sign, like here, then words that you would notice in word problems could be more than or above, and there are more. This isn't a full list. If you see less than or equal to, some words that represent less than or equal to in word problems could be at most or no more than. And then finally, greater than or equal to. If you see at least or no less than, those are words that represent greater than or equal to. So this table is going to really help you when we're translating word problems into math. So it's something that you're just going to have to kind of put into memory. All right, when we're graphing inequalities, an open circle shows that 5 is not part of the solution. Remember when we were going through the definitions and I told you that when you have an answer, like if your inequality is A is greater than 5, when you're graphing that, you're going to put a symbol at 5 on the number line. And that symbol is going to be either an open circle or a closed circle. If the symbol is greater than or less than, so if we have a greater than or a less than sign, the symbol that you will use is an open circle, meaning that it's not shaded in, not colored in. Okay? If the variable is greater than or equal to or less than or equal to a number, the number is indicated with a closed circle. So, in this example where we have b is less than or equal to 3, since it's less than or equal to, we still put a circle at 3, okay, at our numeric answer, but we shade it in. It gets closed. It's what we call a closed circle, but literally you shade it in. All right, so anytime it's less than or greater than, less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, the circle on the number line that indicates the part of your solution will be shaded or colored in. All right, a couple things you're going to need to know how to do are writing inequalities. And we're going to need to look back at that chart in your notes and refer to some of the terms that were given. So, for example, letter A, there are at least 15 people in the waiting room. At least 15. So here's our hint word, at least. Okay, so that means that there could be 15 people or there could be more, at least. There could also be 16 or there could be 17 or 18. So in this case, the number of people is greater than or equal to 15 because 15 people could be part of the at least. All right, at least means greater than or equal to. If we were to graph this solution, we would graph it with a closed circle. All right, let's look at B. The tram attendant will allow no more than 60 people on the tram. All right, no more than 60 people. No more than is going to be our hint word. All right, and you kind of have to think about this. So, no more than means less than or equal to. So, 60 people would be okay on the tram, but 61 people would not be okay. All right, so our solution would be greater than or equal to. The number of people is less than or equal to 60. Less than or equal to 60. So again, 60 would be okay, but 61 would not be okay. All right, write an inequality for each of these situations. So there are at most 10 gallons of gas in the tank. At most 10 gallons of gas. So our hint word here is going to be at most. So that means that there could be 10 gallons, but not more than 10 gallons. Okay, at most means less than or equal to. And you need to just memorize that chart. So the gallons of gas is less than or equal to 10. All right, so memorizing those hint words is going to be important. All right, and then finally, letter D, there is at least 10 yards of fabric left. Again, hint word in this case is going to be at least, meaning that there could be 10 yards or 11 or 12. Right, so at least means greater than or equal to. So our inequality would be written like yards of fabric is greater than or equal to 10. So memorizing that table and knowing the hint words is going to be really important. All right, we've touched a little bit on graphing, but let's kind of go back to that topic. So if our inequality sign is less than, like this, that means our solution on our number line would have an open circle, all right, and we would shade all the numbers less than 2. All right, one little tip is that if you think of the arrow part, I like to call it an arrowhead, but if you think of the arrowhead of the inequality sign as an arrow or as a direction, you're going to shade in the direction that points. So since it kind of looks like it's pointing to the left, we are going to be shading to the left. All right, let's look at the next example. So x is less than or equal to -1. So I find -1 on my number line. It's less than or equal to, so I'm going to shade it solid. And then I'm going to look and say, oh, it's pointing to the left. My arrowhead is pointing to the left, so I'm going to shade to the left. And again, less than or equal to -1 is everything less to the left. So I shade there. All right, next one. X is greater than or equal to 0, or sorry, just greater than. X is greater than 0. All numbers greater than 0. So since it's greater than, I'm going to have an open circle. Okay, greater than and less than, your circle is not shaded. And look, my arrowhead points to the right, so I'm shading to the right. All right, x is greater than or equal to, so x could be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. All right, but notice I'm shading in the direction that the little arrowhead points. And then finally, x is greater than or equal to -2. So all numbers greater than or equal to -2 are answers, or that would make this statement true. So greater than or equal to means a closed circle fully shaded in. My arrowhead is pointing to the right, so I'm shading to the right. And this would highlight the correct answers in this solution. Remember, inequalities have more than one answer. Okay, let's go through and start solving some inequalities. And really, to solve inequalities, you solve them the exact same way that you solve equations. All right, the only difference is one in particular situation, and we'll get there. Okay, so solve d minus 2 is less than or equal to 1. And then it wants us to graph the equation. So the first thing I want you to be aware of is just like you did with equations, you're still going to use your inverse balance solve method. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this question. So d minus 2 less than or equal to 1. All right, so I like to do the railroad tracks, what I call railroad tracks, and basically I just put 2 lines around my inequality sign, or if it was an equation, I would put my lines around the equal sign. And that just shows me what part of the problem I'm starting on. I always want to start on the side where my variable is. And remember, my goal is to isolate the variable, okay, to get the variable by itself. So to do that, I need to do inverse balance solve. All right, I'm going to take the inverse of the constant. Well, here's the constant. Remember, the constant is the number on the same side of the inequality sign as the variable, but it's not directly next to the variable, so it's the one by itself. And right now, I have -2. So the inverse of -2 is +2. So I'm going to add 2. All right, I'm going to do the balance part, which is what I do to one side of my railroad tracks. I'm going to do to the other side of my railroad tracks. All right, so I need to keep the inequality balanced. All right, so I have it balanced, and now I'm going to solve. Solving means to cross out what's going to cancel. These two are going to equal 0, so they basically can't cancel each other out. Bring down what's left over. So I'm bringing down the d. I've isolated my variable. Bring down your inequality sign, and then compute your answer. 1 plus 2 is 3. So my inequality, d, is less than or equal to 3. All right, well, let's make a graph that shows the representation of this. So I'm going to draw a number line, and again, if I'm writing it on the screen, you should be writing it on your paper. All right, so I have 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the symbol. All right, since it's less than or equal to, that means that it should be a shaded circle. So I'm going to go to my number answer, which is 3. I'm going to shade that circle in, so I'm going to color it in, okay? And you can certainly color it in a lot better than my pen works on this, but it does have to be fully shaded in, okay? All right, and then I'm going to highlight the part of the number line that fits in this inequality, or that would make this inequality true. So since my my inequality sign is pointing to the left, that's the part that I need to shade, and it probably would show a little bit better if I pick a different color. So let's pick blue. All right, so I'm going to shade this part of my number line. All right, and that means that any number on this side of the number line would make this inequality true. D is less than or equal to 3. All right, let's try another one. So in this one, we have a little situation that we need to watch out for. All right, it says, don't forget, this is a really important rule, don't forget to reverse the inequality sign when you multiply or divide by a negative number. So if we're multiplying or dividing by a negative number, we need to make sure that we are flipping the inequality sign. All right, so let's go through and we'll do this one. So I have negative 4w is less than 20. So again, I'm just going to use my principles of inverse balance solve. All right, I'm going to draw my lines to do my railroad track so I know what side of the inequality sign to start on. I always start on the same side as the variable. My goal is to get this variable by itself, and right now the negative 4 is multiplied by the w, and the inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by negative 4. Okay, I want to make sure that I divide by that sign as well. I'm going to divide 20 by negative 4, so make sure that I'm doing the B part of inverse balance solve, keeping it balanced. Okay, and now I need to solve. So my negative 4's will cancel each other out, so I cross through them. I bring down my w. I'm going to work with the other side. 20 divided by negative 4. All right, a positive divided by a negative gives me a negative answer. And 20 divided by 4 is 5. And now I have to go to my sign. And this is where this special rule comes into play. When I'm dividing or multiplying by a negative number, I need to remember to flip my symbol around. All right, so the correct answer would be w is greater than negative 5. All right, to graph this, again, I do that on a number line. And I would need to go through, and let's say that we're going to start at negative 6. -5, -4, -3. Okay, so I have my number line done. I'm going to change my pen color so it's easy to really see. Okay, since my symbol is greater than or less than, doesn't have the or equal to, I know my circle is going to be open. So I'm just going to have my circle wide and open. And I'm looking at the direction of the arrow. It's pointing to the right. W is greater than -5. Well, all the numbers greater than -5 are to the right. Okay, so I would go through and just really strongly highlight this part of my number line. Okay, let's try one more. All right, solving a two-step inequality. Well, that doesn't change. All right, the same way you solve a two-step equation, you do the same thing for an inequality. Okay, let's start with our railroad tracks. Remember inverse balance solve. Okay, we still do the same steps. When you have a two-step equation, you just do it twice. All right, and remember the little story that we told you about your friends and your family. So you want to make sure that you're applying that here. All right, I'm always starting on the same side of the inequality sign as my variable, and I'm starting with my friends. So I'm going to do inverse balance solve with my friends. So I have a positive 1. Well, the opposite would be -1. All right, I'm going to subtract 1. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I'm going to do -1 here. I balanced it, I took the inverse, I balanced it, and now I'm going to solve. These would cancel out. I'm going to bring down what's left over, which was going to be 2x. I bring down my inequality sign. I'm not dividing or multiplying, so I don't switch the sign. Okay, it has to be a negative that you're multiplying or dividing by. And then I compute this side. 4 minus 1 is 3. All right, now I just do inverse balance solve again. So I have my railroad tracks. 2 and x are multiplied, so the inverse of multiplication is division. I represent that with a fraction bar and a 2 underneath. I'm going to balance it, so I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And now I'm going to solve. So I've inversed, I've balanced, and now I'm going to solve. I'm going to cross out the 2's. They will cancel each other out. I'm left with x. I bring down my inequality sign. I didn't do anything with negative numbers, so it stays the same direction. And 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. Okay? If I were to graph this, it would be a graph with a closed circle, and I would highlight to the left of 1.5. All right, here are a couple for you to try on your own. Your teacher will review these in class with you tomorrow, as well as be ready for a video quiz on Lesson 6. This is your final lesson in Unit 2, so you should certainly feel good about that. We're getting through 7th grade math. Great job, and we will go through these tomorrow with your teacher.